Hello there. Welcome to the Whore of Babylon Tagalong podcast. This is episode 1. I am your host, Turk, and we'll be discussing a shit ton of shit. But just for starters, we'll be going off about me, tell you a little bit about myself. I was a born-in Jehovah's Witness. My mom, as long as I can remember, she's always been in it. My grandmother as well. My dad, he wasn't until later on. I'll get into that. And later on, when he does come in, that's where it kind of starts to get interesting. But everything before then, he is just a normal dad that takes the family to the Kingdom Hall, drops them off, picks them up, but never showed any sort of interest. But he was always respectful to the brothers and families that came around. But it was a little difficult at times, but I definitely understood why. So growing up, I had three siblings, sister, brother, and brother. I was the youngest. My oldest brother, he was never really a Jehovah's Witness because he was, I think, already, when I was born, he was, I think, almost a teenager, so it was very new to him, so he never stuck around with it. But my other brother and sister, they were definitely in it, physically and mentally, and definitely still are. My oldest brother isn't in it. Me and him get along really, really well. The next one down, he is an elder at a congregation in California. And then my sister below him, she's married to an elder here where I'm at in the state of Utah. He runs, I'm not entirely sure. It's been years since I've even spoken to them. I see her, I can count on my hands how many times I've seen her in the last 10 years, honestly. But it's okay. I understand what's going on. So growing up was pretty shitty. It was very difficult at times. Just being the youngest, as a Jehovah's Witness, I love to skate. I love skate culture, Tony Hawk, and all that. I was a young kid when all that happened. I love going to the skate park. I love riding bikes, jumping them, and doing all that. I wasn't really allowed to do them at times, and that upset me. That sucked, because as a kid, it's traumatizing. You like something, you show interest, but it's a huge no-no. You're meant to feel like you're fucking up or something. And this guilt you feel turns to trauma, and then you think it's just normal, and you feel as if God's correcting you when you're just expressing your interest to whatever it is that you dig. And that's okay, but growing up Jehovah's Witness, that's a big no-no. And growing up, I loved punk rock, I love hardcore, I love metal, and maybe why I like it is because it was taboo. Like, I wasn't allowed to, so to me it stood out, and I love it. I loved listening to 106.7 K-Rock, alternative rock station, and at the time they would play like Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, and then eventually dipped into Foo Fighters and all that with Blink-182, pop punk coming out, and I loved pop punk, and then eventually dipped into the pop punk that I like now, and so forth, and it's still new music going on, but I've gotten so much shit for just liking the music that I do. Emo, metal, hardcore, like, just, they scream, obviously, it sounds horrible, but this music was actually what helped me get through a lot of shit, because it spoke. It's for those that don't fit in. You don't fit in with them, we'll accept you, we don't give a fuck. Acceptance, not repentance. That's a quote from one of my favorite bands, Stick to Your Guns, and still to this day it stands out. Jesus, pun intended. So me loving music, that was a big part of me. I love drawing art. Art was a huge thing. As a kid, it was always said that I was going to go to Bethel and I'm going to draw for the Watchtower and I don't even think they make it anymore. Watchtower and the Awake magazine. Watchtower and the Awake. It's been about 10 years since I've even gone to another congregation or to a meeting. Fuck. And then COVID hit, so it's even worse now. But art, music, all that stuff, anime, comic books, superhero shit, all that was what I loved. But to a certain extent, I wasn't really allowed to like it. There was still some sort of guilt because powers, some sort of power. Superheroes, they have powers, but to a certain extent, I wasn't allowed to like it or watch it. Pokemon, that was a huge no. Yu-Gi-Oh, that was a huge no. Any sort of anime was a huge no because it's directed towards adults. It's very violent. The artwork is pretty badass, which is probably why I liked it, but fuck. Liking all that as a kid, you have to hide it. It's like you have to hide being yourself just so others in this cult would accept you and love you. And at the time, it's hard to think that way because it's just you're so programmed into this way of thinking, and it sucks. As a kid, it hits you fucking hard. And I'm sure there's other people that are probably in worse condition, to where they're just so grasped, the trauma is so deep. Like my sister, she would get panic attacks and no one knew why, and it was just like, oh, you're overthinking, pray to Jehovah, read the Bible. But now, from my perspective, now at this moment, looking back at it, I think my sister was just having panic attacks because of the guilt she felt from just being herself. The first time it happened, my mother and her visited New York. They went to Bethel to visit someone in our congregation that was there. And before they got there, I remember at the hotel when they got back, they mentioned that my sister had her chest was hurting, she couldn't breathe. And turns out she was just having a panic attack, is what the doctor said. She's freaking out. She's overthinking something, whatever it is. It could be a number of things. But from what I've learned from podcasts and books of neuroscientists that I love, they mentioned a lot of stuff about anxiety, which stems from a type of trauma. Religious trauma syndrome is one thing that I learned about, where you mistaken fear and trauma for guilt. Everything that you feel guilty or may feel guilty about because you like something is really a fear or trauma, because we're so programmed to like a certain something, an idea, and that's exactly how we're supposed to be. We're these imperfect humans doing their fucking darndest to be perfect. And that's some fucking heavy weight for a teenager, and that was my sister. And this is just speculation, this is just from what I believe since I've left the church and looking back in retrospect. I think my sister was just having straight panic attacks because she felt like she was probably not worthy enough to be there, but there she was, and no one knows what she's feeling, and everyone else is worried, and her own ego and emotions are just ripping her apart, but everyone else is probably going through their own shit. But she doesn't know that, I don't know that, and that's where all this anxiety, depression, and negative emotions could seem to be stemming from. And so I did mention in the trailer that I will be discussing psychedelics. Definitely will be discussing psychedelics, because psychedelics had a huge part to do with my awakening and understanding of life and who I am now. The life that was once hijacked by Jehovah, I own again. It's mine. So let's just fuck it. Let's dip into that part. I'll get into the rest of my story later. So shortly after high school, I was in my 20s, 1920. I ate acid. It was incredible. One of the most euphoric, awakening moments. This is probably exactly how I was supposed to feel when I got baptized. But it was the complete opposite. It was just an understanding, an epiphany. This brain fog was lifted that was caused by the church, by the organization. And now all that brain power, let's say I dedicated 40% of my brain power to this Jehovah bullshit. All the meetings, studying, logging in hours, preaching on Saturday, all that would consume at least half, let's say 40 to 50% of my brain. But after that LSD trip, it's like that 40% was lifted, and all this mental baggage that I've been carrying from growing up Jehovah Witness is gone. So in a way, it's like, what did I have to lose but gain my life back? And it was this understanding to where I was wrong and it was okay to be wrong. And as a true believing Jehovah Witness, that mindset does not exist, not even in the slightest, because the truth, it's called the truth, and the more you say it, the only person you're going to convince is ultimately yourself. The more you force an idea so others believe it, you're eventually going to be the one that is believing. You're placeboing yourself in a way. And my brother and his wife, oh, the truth. My mom, oh, the truth. They've been saying that for almost as long as I've been alive, and I'm almost 30. So after a while, after so long, it's like you're going to believe your own lies. And that little bit was what the LSD was allowing me to recognize, that, wait, what if I'm wrong? It's definitely okay to be wrong. My Mormon neighbors had the same emotion, compassion, and love towards their God and Jesus, as well as we, the Jehovah Witnesses, had our love and compassion and emotion towards our God and Jesus, Jehovah and Jesus. Yet they're wrong, and they're pointing the fingers at us that we're wrong. But it's coming from the same source. And I was thinking, like, wait, what if I'm wrong? Like, holy shit, it's okay to be wrong if I'm wrong. And this LSD was able to pinpoint that, and I was able to see that a lot of my guilt and bullshit was coming from growing up Jehovah's Witness. This fucking idea that the creator of the universe is out to get me personally. But everyone out there is, in a way, going through their own bullshit like that. And it's fucking nuts. And so forth. Me and my Mormon friends, now ex-Mormon, continued, and we ate mushrooms and so forth. And every time was something more that I realized. And the more that I realized, the more I realized I didn't realize shit. So then I thought, like, everything that I once knew means absolute nothing. Like, what? The truth, the very religion that I knew as the truth, was the poison. I was taught that the poison was the antidote, but now that I'm on the other side, on the outside looking in, Jesus, it's fucking nuts, pun intended. So that was that acid trip. I've taken it many times, but that moment was the main awakening moment where I realized, holy shit, I'm wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. And it felt amazing. And I think at that point I wasn't just happy, but I was honestly happy. I wasn't faking being happy like I was as a Jehovah's Witness. And that was fucking nuts. But I do recommend you do your research upon that. It's not legal in every state. Definitely do your research. There's no 100% safe guide when it comes to psychedelics. The only safe guide is just not using it at all. It's not for everyone. But for me, it definitely worked out. That's just my story. So I'll keep getting back into where I left off. So I moved from California to Utah, super Mormon state. Growing up amongst Mormons and then taking LSD definitely helped me with my awakening story, or my awakening moment experience. So back to my dad. He was never a Jehovah's Witness. My mom was the true believing, physically and mentally, and my dad never was. Or not, sorry, scratch that. He never was until further down the road. We'll get to that. So at this moment, he's not, fuck it, don't even talk to me about religion. So we moved to Utah when I was about 12, and it was so horrible because, like, just a kid wants to play. He just wants to hang out, wants to ride his bike, wants to scrape his knees, get dirty. But I couldn't. I had to go preaching almost every day that fucking summer. Every day. I guess every here and there my mom let me stay, but she didn't want me to. I had to go preach. I had to do this. And I think eventually, from all the bitching and guilt and pressure, I decided to be an unbaptized publisher. It's like, you're with your mom anyways. It's like, why not mark the hours? So I did. Fuck it. Can't beat them, join them. So I did it. And then I started feeling accepted. They started liking me and like, oh, you're doing what you're told. Let's give you this unconditional love. But really, it's conditional because we're only going to treat you good if you do what we say. And I didn't notice that until my LSD trip, till it dissolved away this social construct that growing up as a Jehovah's Witness built up. But growing up a publisher, finally I'm a publisher. Nice, things are getting to change. People are nice. Yeah, fucking right. It all went back to the same thing. It's like, now you got to get baptized. And somewhere, so in between that, when we moved to Utah, there was no Spanish-speaking congregation. My mom was, in a way, the first to bring the Spanish-speaking congregation, because all there was an English, and we would go to the English. We all spoke English, but his Spanish culture, that's Mexican cultures where we came from, so going to the Spanish congregation was a lot easier for my mom. Anyways, but the next town south was a Spanish-speaking congregation, which is about an hour away. That was a big drive. I think we would do it every other Sunday, but then we'd go to English. But then eventually it grew to the point of splitting, to where a second congregation was made closer to our town. So it was half the distance. And then from there, more elders came and they wanted to help, and they moved from elsewhere. And then eventually a Spanish congregation began where we were, in my little town. And that was a big thing because it was very little for the time being. My mom was passing out mics because I wasn't baptized yet. I was a teenager, but I wasn't baptized, so I couldn't technically pass the mic. So my mom had to do a lot of the leading and a lot of helping with the elders. And it looked bad because her fucking son just sitting there warm in the seat. I didn't give a fuck. I'm sitting there texting my hidden girlfriend in between my legs. And I'm supposed to help out with being a minstrel servant, or even pushing to be that. But I didn't even show any interest in being in even getting baptized. I didn't care. I just wanted to play music, play my drums, listen to my music, go to the skate park, go ride my bike, hit the skate park. But I was made to feel guilty every time, so I had to hide it. It sucked, living a double life, being myself, but in a way being obligated to be this Jehovah Witness still, which is a little fucking difficult. But it worked out, whatever. So my mom kind of started the first congregation, and eventually the pressure built up to me getting baptized. So I did. I got baptized. Everything got good for a while. And by then, I helped out Pastor Mike's for a second. But at the moment, I was playing in a band. I was playing drums with some friends, some Mormons as well. They were ex-Mormon, maybe not at the time. They are now. But we were playing bands. I love punk, hardcore, so that's the music we played. It was pretty aggressive. Some of it was very metal influenced, but overall it was aggressive. And there was a time on Facebook where there was this one girl, this nosy little bitch. She was stalking my Facebook, and my band, pictures tagged, I was playing shows and all that, me on the drums, were found by her. She told her dad. Her dad called me out. And I got in trouble for liking Satan's music and participating in the world, and they didn't know this is what I was doing. And they ended up calling me in. And when they called me in, they had a packet with them. It was actually pretty fucking funny. They had a packet with them, and they called me out because there was Christmas shows. These bands were playing on Christmas, wearing ugly sweaters. It was just fun. We're all hanging out. And this packet showed, it was a thread of comments inviting me to the Christmas show. We were going to play and this and that. We were going to hang out. And they brought them to me. And me, obviously, I didn't care. That's exactly what I was doing. But in order to please them, I put on this front. I started crying and, I feel so bad. I'm sorry. And then ultimately, all ended, decided that they were going to disfellowship me because they didn't buy my bullshit. And I guess at the time I didn't either. But looking back at it, I'm like thinking I'm a bad motherfucker and I can convince anyone. But really, who am I trying to kid? I'm just some fucking dumb teenager. So I go to my mom. I tell her I'm going to get disfellowshipped. She knew I was playing drums, and I told her exactly why and what they told me. And she understood, and she knew I was playing drums, and I shouldn't have, and this and that, yada, 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 yada. So after I got disfellowshipped, oh, damn it, I skipped a very important part. So before I got baptized, my dad started showing interest in growing up, and just pretty much also can't beat him, join him. Here he is in Utah, about to retire, taking my mom in, me and my mom. My sister's married, my older brother's out, moved out. He's taking us, he's finally just, fuck it, showing interest, and then eventually he falls into it subconsciously, just like when you say the truth over and over and over, you're just the only person you're going to convince is yourself. So he gets baptized very, very shortly after. So the pressure on me gets even heavier because it's like, oh, wow, your dad got baptized before you, and you were born in, and you're barely passing mics, and my dad was being praised up the ass. But then there was me, the teenager that goes to school, all this other pressure, and I had a girlfriend. I liked her. She was super cool. She understood me and everything, but it was just a fuckery. But I told my mom I was getting DF'd. She understood. And by then I was already smoking weed and all that, just helping me with anxiety and depression and just, fuck this. As a teen, my life is very hard. But after that, when I got disfellowshipped, that's when it started going off. And then shortly after, that's when I did the LSD. And that's when my new life started. My life. It's just incredible how just growing up with other heavily indoctrinated Christians, and they're only allowed to look up their information, just as Jehovah's Witnesses only look up anything from the Watchtower. If a Mormon offered a magazine to the Jehovah's Witness may accept it out of respect, but they're not going to take it seriously. Just as if the Mormon accepted a Watchtower magazine, they're not going to read it. They're going to take it out of respect, but it was the same thing, and that conflicted me so much. And then the psychedelics also helped me dissolve a certain mindset and way of thinking, and now I think for myself. I live for me. And it's incredible, and I would recommend the same for everyone, but it's not the same because religious trauma syndrome definitely exists. And also, they couldn't answer any of my questions, none at all. One main thing that I had that came up in my mind, just the Bible being read, like written by man. That's all it is just word of human. And I started thinking about it, and they couldn't answer any of my questions, and it's just also more of a setback, because I would come up with questions like, here in this whole Bible text is all these chapters, it's Jesus praying on a rock to Jehovah. He's praying to him so emotionally and compassionately, and he's there on moonlight. It's very descriptive. But then I ask, who's writing that? Jesus is kicking it on a rock, moonlight, praying, almost crying to Jehovah, talking to the creator of the universe, but someone there is writing that. Who's writing that? Who was there to write that? But to me, that just speaks more. It's just more literature written by man. We give it power. Just like instead of God creating us in his image, I think us humans, in time to make reality make sense, we created a God in our image, which is why God has a mouth, face, arms, legs, a beard, surrounded by other men in the sky with bird wings, feathered bird wings. Why the fuck do they have feathered wings? I thought about that too, and if you think about the context of the times back then when the Bible was being written on fucking animal skins, there were no airplanes, there was no single thought of flying other than mysticism and stories. So back then, naturally, what's the only way to get up in the sky? Birds. Birds are the only way to fly, so naturally I think during the storytelling they had bird wings, and in the context of the times, who's going to question that? It's like, oh my God, they live up top. Oh my God. But depicting these humans up in the sky with bird wings makes a little more sense when there's no sort of space, there's no sort of airplanes, nothing up above ground other than birds. So I started thinking like that, to me, seems more like it's written by man. Just human writing stories, and through time, it just becomes other shit. I grew up in Utah, which is heavily Mormon. Joseph Smith, another mysticism, magic type of guy. And here we have one of the greatest, biggest Christian religions combating with Jehovah's Witnesses that are pointing the finger at each other, but in a way they feel that they're going in the same divine good direction. But they hate each other, and that did not set right with me. There's millions of Muslims that disagree with Christians. There's millions of Christians that disagree with Jews, and there's millions of Jews that disagree with the Muslims, and it's all back and forth. And if there truly was something out there, I doubt it would even look back at us. Like if there really was a God that created us, there's no need to look back, because he just... Alright. One thought that I had is that the universe itself could be God itself. I don't consider myself an atheist, because as being certain you believe in a God, being an atheist, you're certain that you don't believe in anything, which we can never fucking know. That's very bold of us to assume. But what I think is perhaps the universe itself could be what God is itself, and through the universe brought on reality, and then this reality brings on evolution, which brings on life. And this universe, God itself, which could be this Jehovah, wanted to experience itself in every aspect possible, from a parasite to a human, from the most traumatic and horrible emotion a human could feel to the most loving and best thing you could experience. The universe is just experiencing itself in every aspect, in every form, testing out every idea, which is why there's so many religions upon the same source. Everyone just pointing the finger, but if everyone just realize that we are this God is us in a way, not necessarily that I'm true, this is just from my perspective and my point of view and the answers and shit that I've put together. So if we just treat each other as if we are each other, it's like you wouldn't treat yourself like an asswipe, like unless you are an asswipe, and what psychedelics allow you to do is to become the observer. And when you become the observer, you see yourself for who you really are. And then you could either acknowledge it and like, holy shit, I talk to people like that. That's how I talk to people. That's who I am. That's how I behave. You could either acknowledge that, change, or live a fucking lie and load tons of trauma and depression on you because you're living a lie that you're not an asswipe and really you're a fucking cunt. And that's what I like about psychedelics, because it turns your life around so you could be a better person, be a better you. You be a better you, and by being a better you're better in a relationship. And when you focus on the positive, there's no negative to worry about. And that to me is a fucking win. That to me is a really huge win. And allowing me to be myself. I listen to the same music, but I don't care now that I'm adult, obviously, but it's still the same me. I'm still doing the same thing. The only difference is I'm not dedicating my life to this organization, giving them money, and in return, I'm just fucking in return of this empty, traumatic shell of a life, not knowing who the fuck I really am anymore. But I know exactly who I am, my authentic self. I know where I came from, I know where I'm going, and I know where I'm at. But not most people can say that. And for me, that's a big thing, and I hope a lot of people can figure that out. And if they're happy in the Jehovah Witness religion, there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. If they're happy, who the fuck am I to take somebody's happiness? That's just their journey. In a way, that's the universe figuring itself out. Mormons, that's them figuring out their answer. In a way, no one's wrong because the universe is just rolling the dice in every aspect. But here we are with our own identities, holding on and taking ourselves so seriously to where the next person will crush them in order to succeed. And that's a little shitty in my opinion. I probably sound a little preachy right now. Whatever. That's fine. It's alright. But I'd say this is a pretty good time to stop my yammering around. Next time, we'll definitely get a little deeper into the mind and just human behavior and how it can help people. Andrew Huberman is a badass neuroscientist that I love to listen to. Lex Fridman's another podcast. Aubrey Marcus, really intelligent individual, psychonaut, really educational when it comes to psychedelic use, but it's definitely not for everyone, like I said earlier. Definitely be careful along those lines. So I'd say that's a pretty good start to tell about myself and conclude this first episode. The next few episodes, I definitely want to bring in some of my ex-Mormon best friends so they could talk about their story and maybe others can relate to it. And if someone wants to hit me up, then that'd be kick-ass. I could figure out a way to get them on and we could discuss music, movies, comics, whatever the hell. The new Spider-Man. We could talk about that shit. That movie's been out for a while now. Yes, all 3 of them were on there. It's been a long time. If you haven't seen it, get fucked. That's your fault. That movie was sick. So next time we could definitely get into some movies with some messages like The Truman Show, The Matrix. Those have some deep meaning and they can speak out to a Jehovah Witness that's heavily indoctrinated. And some science fiction shit. Well, let's cut it right here. Almost 30 minutes. That's not bad. 26. So for episode 2, will be a little more interesting.